The Keeper's Chronicle. If the truth of Pital Arrowleaf were easy to pin down, he would have been forgotten long ago. Some say he is older than the first stones laid in Steel City's foundations. That his footsteps have worn more roads than a king's caravans. Others insist he is merely a man, red of hair, green of cloak, wandering where the wind wills him, living as any mortal might, though with uncanny luck at his back. The truth, I suspect, drifts somewhere in the borderlands between. The bards sing of a sack slung low at his side, a weather-beaten thing that holds the bounty of a dozen kingdoms, steel enough to arm a warband, food enough to outlast a siege, drink enough to float the mood of a broken army. They do not always mention the Tolk, perhaps because they do not understand it, nor do I. The Tolk is problematic for scholars, especially the type that consider themselves experts in enchantment theory. It does not hum with mana like a wizard's charm. It does not ripple on the etheric spectrum like a runic ward. In fact, the Tolk does not register at all, not under divination, not under alchemical assay, not even under those clumsy new magnoscry lenses imported from the Eastern artificers. If you scan it, you see nothing. If you touch it, you feel nothing unusual. And yet, when the purse is opened by its rightful bearer, an item emerges, always one, always the same. But what it is, that is the deeper riddle. Some whisper the Tolkien is not magical at all, but rather an artifact of some pre-arcane age. Made when the old worlds still bent their knowledge to what I would call technology. I have heard speculation that the Tolk contains within it a pocket of compressed matter, stabilized by forces older than magic, forces like graviton dampening and dark mass encapsulation. A friend of mine, a gnomish lenswright with more degrees than good sense, once argued that the Tolk uses an energy sink made of theoretical blacklight matter, a substance that absorbs not only light, but every measurable vibration of the universe. If true, this would explain why no magical sense can find it. It swallows the signal before it exists. But the sack, that larger, weathered armory on a strap Pital carries, operates on a very different principle. A bag of holding, you might think, but this is no common stitched dimensional fold like you find on mage caravans. Pital's sack behaves more. Presently, to open it is to gaze into a drifting miniature of its own contents. Blades float there, no bigger than sewing needles, loaves of bread bob past canteens, no wider than a button, long pikes drift like splinters on a pond's surface. They are not illusions. I have reached in my one meeting with him, and plucked a miniature dagger from among the shifting cluster. The moment its hilt crossed the lip of the sack, the thing grew, blossoming into full size with no sudden snap, but rather a stretching, as if the air itself were coaxing it back to its proper shape. Scholars argue whether the sack manipulates time, space, or both. The most compelling theory is that it exists in a fluid dimensional buffer, a layer between reality and whatever lies beneath it, where matter is compressed not by magic alone, but by a kind of gravitational folding akin to how black holes might store light. The difference, of course, is that black holes do not return what they swallow. Pital's sack does. And then there is the question of why the contents drift and shift. A common bag of holding presents its cargo in a static ordering, sometimes by the will of the user. But Pital's sack changes. Every time he opens it, the items have rearranged themselves, not in random chaos, but in subtle patterns that, according to one dwarven runemaster I interviewed, move like constellations in a night sky. The implication is unsettling. Either the sack's storage realm has its own physics, like currents in an ocean, or the sack itself is alive, thinking, choosing the arrangement for reasons of its own. I once asked him, outright, how it worked. He only smiled. "Keeps me from getting bored," he said, and cinched the drawstring closed. Of his skill with weapons, the tales are united. Give him a blade, a bow, a pike, or a polearm, and before the next moonrise, he will wield it as if born with it in hand. This gift, curse perhaps, has made him both hero and threat, depending on whose banner he fought beneath. Some theorists propose that the same dimensional resonance that governs his sack enhances his neuromuscular learning. as if the space between worlds also stores the echo of every warrior who has ever lived, and Pital can reach into it. But such ideas drift dangerously close to heresy in the Crimson Pentacle's dominion. I have seen him only once. A tall figure, 6 feet and some, shoulders broad as a smith's bench, hair the hue of fresh kindling catching fire. His smile was the kind you'd trust to guard your life, his eyes, the kind that told you he'd already saved 100 more. He wore the garb of a ranger, plain yet proud, and carried himself with that easy stride of a man who owns the road as much as the road owns him. Friend to dwarves, elves, men, and stranger folk besides, he walks the breadth of Yyth, not to conquer. Not to rule, but because, so it is said, standing still too long feels like death to him. And yet, he is a man who carries both sack and tolk at all times. And this tells me one thing above all: the items he holds are not simply tools of convenience. They are pieces in some larger design, a pattern only he sees. And if I am right, if the tolk truly conceals something that even gods cannot sense, then Pital Arrowleaf is not merely wandering without aim. He is hiding something. Something he must keep moving to protect. This is why I write of him now. Why I gather these accounts like stardust in my palm. He is, perhaps, a hero. Or perhaps, he is a fuse burning toward a powder keg none of us yet see. I cannot tell you how many of these words are truth, and how many are the moss that grows on truth's stone. But I can tell you this: should you see him, and should he offer you bread from that drifting sack, take it. And thank him. For in that moment, whether you know it or not, you will be standing inside a legend. The Keeper's Chronicle 2. There are rebels, and there are exiles, and then there are those rare few who choose to be both. Draka Kyrael was once a Crimson Pentacle Knight, sworn blade of the Red Dragon god Oberon. In those days, his armor gleamed with the Order's enchanted crest, its sigil pulsing faintly with the slow-time charm that allowed the pentacle to move with an almost inhuman grace in battle. But that same enchantment chained him to the will of the Order's commands, binding body and thought alike. When Draka turned against them, the first thing he did was kill the magic in his crest. The method, so the tales claim, was both simple and irreversible. He walked into the deepest of frost caverns, where the walls groan with the breath of ancient ice, and held the sigil to the stone until the frost gnawed it grey. What emerged was no longer a badge of the pentacle, but a scar. Tarnished metal, stripped of power, stripped of obedience. The Order calls it an act of heresy. I call it the first honest decision of his life. His exile began with a mission gone wrong, or perhaps gone right, depending on whose account you believe. He was sent to subdue or kill Dothnas the Traveller, one of the enduring, a man of ogre's stature, who had walked the world for centuries, said to carry the memory of every place he'd ever set foot. The Pentacle wanted Dothnas silent, permanently, but Draka was not alone in that hunt. This is where the story curls into stranger shapes. An orange-hued dragon, Sornastadasil, whose name is longer in the old tongue than any breath can comfortably speak, crossed his path. Dragons do not give their company lightly, and rarer still do they give their favor. But that season was meant to be the dragon's spawning, and he had missed it, perhaps for reasons no one can know. Instead of seed to hatchlings, Sornastadasil gave essence. He poured the fragment of his soul, his will, and his spark of the storm into Draka's sword. The sword was unnamed, until that moment. Afterward, it called itself Sonaking. Now, I must make clear, Sonaking is no bound, voiceless relic. It talks. Those who have heard it speak say it sounds like a boy in his early teens, restless, curious, prone to muttering questions, and offering unasked-for opinions. Some claim this is because a dragon's soul once removed from its own body, reverts to a younger state. Others argue it is the sword learning to be alive at all. What is known is this: the sword can cast a lightning strike from its tip, a thunder voice of Sornastadasil himself echoing in every bolt. When Draka sleeps, Sonakinga does not. It keeps watch, alerting him to movement or danger, sometimes humming low songs in a language only dragons know. There is some debate among artificers about how such an infusion works. Dragons are not simply creatures of muscle and scale, they are storms with bones, living reactors of elemental force. To bind that essence into steel is no small feat. The prevailing theory among the few who dare discuss it is that Sornastadasil wove his essence into the sword's crystalline lattice, altering the very grain of the metal until it could channel and contain the charge of his being. This would mean that the sword's power is not magical in the common sense, but a form of self-sustaining energy, a hybrid of living spirit and conductive alloy. And yet, for all its power, the sword remains childlike. Some say Draka talks to it like a father to a son, others say they bicker like siblings. A witness in Frostshire told me he once heard Draka mutter, "Not now," and the sword replied, "But I can do it now, look," before hurling a bolt into the mountainside, sending an avalanche roaring down. Draka himself has grown solemn since his break with the pentacle. His armor still bears the lines of the Order's make, but without the gleam, without the speed. He moves slower now, not because he cannot move faster, but because he chooses to. Every step is measured, every word weighed. The pentacle calls him traitor. I suspect he wears the word with quiet pride. Of Dothnas the Traveller, the records grow unclear. Some say Draka refused to kill him, striking instead at the pentacle agents who came after. Others insist Draka never found him at all, but kept the sword as a sign of his new path. The truth may be lost, or it may be that Draka himself chooses not to speak of it. What is certain is that he now walks the land in open rebellion against his old order, Sona King ever at his side. The pair are an odd sight, a weathered knight and a sword that cannot stop talking. But those who have fought beside them say that when the blade's lightning comes, it comes with the fury of a dragon's heart, and no crimson pentacle warrior has yet stood against it and lived. I write this not to glorify rebellion, nor to vilify the order. But history tends to remember the obedient less than the disobedient, and Draka Kyrell's name will be carved somewhere in the stone of this age, whether as hero, villain, or something stranger still. Gatekeepers Chronicle 3. If you have heard of Dothnas the Traveller, it was likely in the telling of someone else's story. That is his way, always the courier, never the headline. But in the shadowed corridors of power, his name carries the weight of a kingdom's seal. Dothnas is one of the enduring, a man in shape, an ogre in stature, towering and broad-shouldered, his sheer mass filling the road ahead like the prow of a warship. His back is forever bent, not in defeat, but under the load of the great war chest he carries. The thing is no ordinary pack or crate, it is a trunk of iron-bound oak, big enough to fit a child's bed, fixed to a harness so cunningly balanced that he can run with it as though it were no more than a day's gear. And run he does. No horse keeps his pace, no hawk keeps his course. Some say his speed is unnatural, gifted by whatever makes the enduring live beyond the turning of normal years. Others claim the chest itself is enchanted to lighten its weight, though those who have touched it swear it still feels heavy enough to crush a lesser man flat. Whatever the truth, Dothnas moves across the lands of Yyth with uncanny swiftness, vanishing from one horizon and appearing on another before the moon has shifted twice. He is not a trader, nor a common courier. His clients are the highest of the high, kings, queens, chancellors, high priests. He delivers only the most critical of messages, royal decrees, stays of execution, official bounty notices, declarations of war, transfers of power, deeds of land. The opening of his war chest is always a moment of ceremony. I have heard that he kneels, unlocks 3 separate latches in a precise sequence, and withdraws the document with hands so steady, it seems the air stills around him. To do this work, he is versed in all heraldry. He can tell a false crest from a true one at a glance, recall the sigil of a dead dynasty long fallen to dust, or name the exact year a banner design was changed. He speaks, reads, or can at least translate nearly every tongue spoken in Yyth, from the whispered clicks of the subterranean stonekin to the florid trade languages of the eastern ports. His memory is flawless, hypothymesiac, the scholars say, which means every face, Every name, every word he has read or heard, is etched into him, as though chiseled in granite. Despite the grandeur of his duties, he dresses simply: boots for the road, a weatherproof cloak, and gloves worn smooth at the palm from both carrying and climbing. His weapon, if you can call it that, is a simple club, thick oak, iron-capped at one end. I have seen him wield it in a brawl, and I assure you, simplicity does not mean mercy. Dothnas fights like a wall falling on you, with enough restraint to stop short of killing, but only if he chooses to. It is said that no one has ever stolen from the war chest while it is on his back. The few foolish enough to try have ended their days nursing broken bones, or finding themselves tossed into ditches, alive but humiliated. Even the more dangerous, assassins, highwaymen, mercenaries, speak his name with a certain professional respect. He does not kill for sport, but he will end any who stand between him and his delivery. There are whispers of enchantment in his speed, but I have my own theory. I believe Dothnas knows every road, every goat track, every smuggler's pass, in Yyth, and chooses his routes not by distance, but by time to arrival. If a bridge is out, he knows 3 other crossings. If snow closes a pass, he knows which frozen river is safe to run. Combine that with his endurance, born of the enduring strange physiology, and you have a man who can outrun winter itself. Dothnas does not linger. Even when night falls, and the campfire is warm, he sits apart, the war chest resting at his side like a sentinel. Some say he talks to it. I suspect he is reciting his route, over and over, keeping the map fresh in his mind so not a heartbeat is lost in hesitation come morning. There is a kind of honor in him that feels older than the kingdoms he serves. He will deliver a message for a king he despises with the same precision and swiftness as one he adores. He does not choose sides. His oath is to the message itself. The parchment in his chest is law until it reaches the hands it was meant for. Only then does it cease to be his concern. If you should meet him, do not ask to see inside the chest. Do not joke about what it might hold. Do not ask him to carry your letter just for luck. Dothnas is not your errand boy, and he does not barter favors. Yet if one day your name finds its way onto a scroll within that iron-bound oak, know this: come, storm, battle, or the turning of the world itself, Dothnas the traveler will see it delivered. And when it is done, he will vanish again, a great shadow receding down the road, bound for the next impossible journey.